Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been like some time that I've been on here, but if you follow me on Instagram or on Twitter more specifically, you kind of, seen what my life has been about. It's not been so fun. I have been experiencing a loss in my life, and grief is a funny thing. Grief is something that comes in waves, and I'm trying to understand really how to grab it, take hold of it, and look it in the eye and ask it, what the fuck is up? Because it could not be more confusing. Anyway, that being said, this past year, 2020, was a year that was short of such pleasures. You know, we were all stuck inside. I mean, we still kind of are stuck inside. And that gave me a lot of time to sit with myself, understand myself, and read more books. At the end of the year, I posted a photo of just like a slideshow of things that were going on in the year. In one of the photos, I took a picture of the books that I read this year, and of course, you guys all wanted to know what I read, if I could recommend it to you, if I enjoyed it, and that is what I'm here to do. Think of it as a little book corner, but of my reads of 2020. Not only did I have the chance to read a bunch this past year, not quite as much as I want to read this year, but I also released my book, which was crazy. I mean, the last video I posted was a poem from my book, so I just want to say thank you to every single person that has supported me and has bought film for her and has shared with me their experience while reading it. I know that it again has been such a strange year, but I hope in some weird way or another that my words brought some sort of light to your day in some capacity. I don't know. Also, before I get started, I actually want to say thank you to today's sponsor for the video, and that is, of course, Cara Vitamins. Now, this year, actually, this upcoming year, it is January, I have new goals for myself, so I actually retook the quiz. I haven't done that in a very long time. I retook the quiz, and now I'm taking new vitamins to combat what I want to achieve this upcoming year. So here is my little pack of Cara Vitamins. As you all know, I've talked about it a million times. These little pre-packaged, oh, there's Lolita. She thinks these are treats. Not only am I taking my daily vitamins, but I'm also taking my fair share of collagen in my latte and my coffee every morning. Like I said, this year I have different goals. I have something really exciting coming up in the spring, and I can't share it right now, but it requires me to really take a step back and think about my health and the way I view my body, because that has been an issue this past quarantine, dealing with that. But being healthy and having new goals for myself and actually working out and not binging Taco Bell at 3 in the morning as much as I want to, and eating healthy. Anyway, I'm definitely much more conscious about what's going in my body this year. I really want to make sure that I hit my little victories, my little goals by spring, even though it's hard. Also, I would like to mention that because I've gotten comments on a few of my last videos where I was sponsored by Care of, saying that it is, not sustainable because this is plastic. This is not plastic. This is biodegradable. I can guarantee that they've made it in such a sustainable way that you won't feel bad for having little packages every single day. If you want to check out Care of for yourself, I will leave a link down in my description below, and for new users who have never tried Care of, you can use my code right here for 50% off your very first order. I promise you it is definitely worth it, and I am a loyal user. Anyway, let's get into the books, and I don't really remember the order of which I read this, but I'm going to do my best and try to, because I feel like it's very important based on the months in when I've read these books. I don't know. So the first book I actually forgot to put in the photo that I originally posted on Instagram, and it wasn't until I was, pulling these books from my shelf did I realize that I read this, I want to say in February, but it is Attached. Now, I actually talked about this in my quarantine favorites video. It is a self-help book, and I know it's targeted for, it looks like it's targeted for romantic relationships. I found myself pulling information from this and putting it into all the relationships in my life, whether that be romantic or my family or my friends, platonic. I found it to be very informative because I also didn't realize that attachment styles can change, definitely based on who you're with, and I found a lot of what I read in here resonated with the relationships I've been in and how I treat them differently and how I react to things much differently, based on my experiences in them. So this was definitely an informative read. Now, at the beginning-ish moments of quarantine, I don't know why I took it upon myself to read these 2 books, because you have to keep in mind I live alone. I was alone for months. It was a new environment, a new train of thought, like everything that was going on. Anyway, I started with Brain on Fire by Suzanne Callahan, which was just the most insane memoir of her month of madness, of when she kind of realized her psychosis and her manicness. You just see the progression of something so little just blow up into something so big. When you are dealing, you know, like with your own mental health issues, you can see bits of yourself in this. You know, I wouldn't go as far as into saying that I completely relate to this, because of course we are on 2 totally separate ends of the mental health spectrum, but there are moments where I do see a bit of myself in her, and I think that's what makes, you know, books so fantastic and stories so fantastic, and why you feel drawn to some of them is because you could see a little bit of yourself in them. Yeah, this is just incredibly fascinating and well written, and a story that I'm so glad lives on paper in book for all of us to read. So this next book I genuinely could not put down for the life of me. I read it in an entire day. I remember there were moments where I was like, give yourself a 10-minute break, be on your phone, like get up, get coffee, do whatever, and I just could not for the life of me do that. I had to get back on the couch and finish reading the book, and I mean, it was so great. And it is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. Now, one thing that, and I hate to say it weirdly disappoints me about this book, is that it is fiction, because I read it in such a way that I truly believed that this was a real story. The main character though, who is, you know, the narrative of this book, the narrator, she doesn't have a name. It never discloses her name. So she just stays as this like almost anonymous entity that you're just so intrigued with her story and her train of thought and everything. And also like the cover is fantastic. This book follows the main character, and it is quite literally her year of rest and relaxation. She just is dealing with her own mental health issues, kind of feels like she hit a wall. She has relationship issues. She feels very alone. She has one friend who she doesn't really like. But at the same time, it's so funny that she has all these issues, but she's also this like kind of like weirdly narcissistic, beautiful, skinny, rich girl who literally has so much privilege. And you just see her go through this mental downfall of believing that she needs to self-medicate herself for an entire year and sleep and not see or speak to anyone. And with the help of a very terrible psychologist who just medicates her whatever she wants, because she forgets half of the time what she gave her the time before. Because I enjoyed this book so much, I did go and read reviews, and I noticed that a lot of the reviews were saying like, oh, I hated this book because it was just so repetitive, it felt so boring. And while that is true, it is repetitive and it does feel like, you know, this boring timeline of things. That is almost entirely the point, I feel, because I mean, how exciting could sleeping for an entire year be to a person? So I don't know, I just found it interesting. I found it intriguing. I didn't think it was boring personally, and I really liked it. And Ottessa Moshfegh has a few other books that I have on my shelf that I have kind of half read. They're great, but I just, nothing hits like this girl. Nothing hits like her. And also, especially reading it during quarantine, I was like, I literally want to sleep for the rest of the year. Like, there's nothing going on, and what's stopping me? Now, something quite interesting that I found to be repetitive in my reading list in 2020 was that I found myself very drawn to books of essays. I think it's mostly because I kind of tapped into that with Film for Her, writing like small short stories and essays. There's something so intriguing about it, especially written by women, essays written by women. I don't know, I feel like a personal connection to it. So there are 3 books of essays that I read this past year that I love. So the first book is Too Much and Not in the Mood by Durga Chu Bose, and the title actually comes from Virginia Woolf's final writings in her diaries, I want to say. Also, just like the cover is amazing. I remember finding out about this book because Florence Welch posted about it, and anything Florence Welch posts about, I'm like, let me indulge in any way that I can. I went on Durga's Instagram, and she is just so cool. She knows so much, has the greatest list of recommendations when it comes to reading as well. I just think she's a really cool girl, and definitely support her, and I want to be her friend so bad. Something I really loved about this is I found the similarities in, you know, what we choose to write about. A lot of this has to do with like loneliness and growing up with immigrant parents and being first generation American, and loss and love, and just, you know, everything that entails with this sort of longing. Except she's way more talented than I am, and has just the perfect use of words for every situation when it comes to her writing, and her essays are just so, they're so fantastic. This was another book that I probably read in about like 2 days. I could not put it down, and I love everything about it, and I have suggested this book to so many people that I know and that I love, because I'm like, just read it, you'll love her. When it comes to women who write a great essay and a great short story, hello, first things first, the #1 girl for me, I cannot stress enough, is Miss Young Eve Babbitts. She is truly the it girl of my dreams. Like, she is so cool. I think the reason why she's so cool to me is because we lead 2 totally separate lives, and there's a part of me that feels like I do live her life. I don't think that makes any sense whatsoever, but there's a part of me, there's this fantasy in my head that I'm like, oh, I'm like an Eve Babbitts, even though I'm literally nothing like her. Her parents were artists. Her dad was a classical musician. She grew up around artists. She has this way of glamorizing Hollywood and Los Angeles and Slow Days and Fast Company. The World of Flesh in LA has just, you know, all of these characters, and it covers the topics of drugs, sex, provocativeness of Los Angeles, and in a weird way it just kind of makes you feel cool for living here, only because she's so cool. Also, what I love so much about her writing is that I feel like she has no filter. She just doesn't care. She lays it all out. She'll say names, she'll give details of whatever it may be, and that is something I aspire to be like, because I, for the life of me, cannot give full details of things without being vague for other people to interpret it the way that they want to interpret it, because I fear being too open with people. Vulnerability is scary, and that is terrifying, and she just gives no fucks. She gives no fucks, and one day I will be an Eve Babbitts of my own, and I will be going off. I will be spilling the tea. I will, you know, do whatever. I don't know, she's so fucking cool and I love her, and I have so many books of her on my shelves, but this one was one that I recently read. Now this next one, I'm going to admit, I bought because I was going through some, you know, some little love issues. I was deeply insecure. I really wanted the attention of somebody who just gave it to me in doses, and it just was terrible. Anyway, Little Weirds by Jenny Slate. I mean, this goes into her life and, you know, like I said, short stories and essays. I know Jenny Slate is obviously a comedian, but this book, along with some of the podcasts she's been featured in, she gives such a great perspective on her, you know, the way she views love and the way she views receiving love and being appreciated by somebody, and the way that you kind of view yourself, because the way you view yourself is very important when it comes to sharing your life with somebody else. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed this. I enjoyed reading about her life growing up, but more specifically her views on marriage and love lost. And I, like I said, and as you all know, I'm a sucker for anything of that sort, so getting her perspective on it was definitely enlightening in many ways. As we all can remember, this past summer was the introduction to truly being confronted with what the fuck is going on in the world, and with that harsh reality came, thankfully, sources for others to really take a look at the privilege that they have and the racism that still lives, not just in America, but globally. Now, I saw a lot of people share this book. I don't know if they all read it, no tea, no shade, but it is Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Edo Lodge. What is so important as somebody who is extremely white passing? I mean, I could not be more white passing as a POC woman, is to understand that privilege, and to not just understand it, but to work it into my daily routine to make sure that I'm conscious about, you know, what it is I'm putting out into the world and how things are, I guess, ultimately perceived, and what I can do, especially with somebody as a platform, to even a little bit, if I could change that in some way or another. Why I'm no longer talking to white people about race is a thought-provoking analysis on racism, global racism, and it is something that I truly recommend everyone read, especially now. If you didn't, you know, read it this summer, read it now. The Black Lives Matter movement wasn't something that, you know, we had for a summer and it's just like, okay, like, let's talk about it, but now that it's all died down, like, we'll put it off to the side. Like, this is something that, you know, we're living, this is our reality. I mean, yes, we've seen, you know, the needle move a little bit, but it's not enough. And I think it is important to truly just inform yourself in any way you can and support in any way you can. And when people do suggest reading books that entail anything that has to do with racism, read it. Obviously, reading things like this is meant to make you feel uncomfortable, but it is something to also keep you informed and to really, in some way or another, try to understand in ways that you never in your life will be able to. What I love so much about it is that it is honest in such an eloquent way that her anger just resonates so deep with you, and you'll see that in the way that she writes, and it's informative, obviously, in terms of history class, race. If you're not doing the work outside of the internet, I deeply encourage you to start now in any way that you can. There are no excuses. There are no excuses. Now, this next book is definitely, I want to say, one of my favorite reads of 2020, and it is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, a novel by Ocean Vuong. And I actually discovered Ocean Vuong on a podcast called On Being, where they had interviewed him, and it was the most beautiful podcast interview I'd ever heard in my entire life, because it's one thing to be well written when you're writing a book and you're writing a novel and you're sharing stories with others, whether that be, you know, a novel or poetry, whatever medium or form that you choose to do. But it's another thing to show that same eloquence and beauty in the way that you speak. And Ocean Vuong just feels almost like a mentor when you hear him speak about his life, or not even just his life, just his viewpoint. There's this sort of magic and this sort of warmth, and it almost feels like a mentor or like an older figure that you would look up to, which is crazy because he's so young, just kind of gently patting you on the back and giving you advice and telling you, like, hey, life happens and you're going to be okay. And something you'll notice in this list, Ocean Vuong and Durga are, you know, he's also someone who is a first-generation American and coming from parents who are not born in America, and kind of the struggles of understanding that life and what that feels like. And On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous is a novel. It's almost like how he described it. It's a letter that he's written to his mother, and his mother can't read English. So, you know, it's almost unsure if she'll ever read this in her life. And it kind of goes back and forth between this narrative with his mother and then also his own personal journey growing up outside of his family. And, you know, it touches on queerness and being a child of immigrants, just, I guess, really understanding your footprint and where you are meant to be in the world, and how that affects you. And I don't know, it's just, it's stunning. And Ocean Vuong is somebody who definitely inspires me as a writer and a human to just study more, to understand more about literature, understand more about the world, read much more, and find comfort in the uncomfort. And yeah, there's a reason why this is so popular right now, and it is because it is so damn good. Now, my last read of 2020 was something extremely personal to me. It is Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking. I've had this book on my shelf for the past 2 years, and I can honestly say I have not opened it once. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, this past year I dealt with a loss that was very unexpected, and it happened to a person who was extremely close to me. Navigating that has been something that it's really hard to explain. And you know, when you think of death and you think of loss, and you haven't really experienced it, you think of like, oh, when that happens, it's, you know, the first few days are going to be the most brutal. That's when it's going to be really hard. But grief has this funny way of, you know, it's not linear, and it appears in waves. And yeah, the first few days are hard, and the funeral is difficult, but it's the stillness after the fact that kind of is haunting, and this almost anticipation that it'll all pass, even though it's like your logical side of your brain and your illogical side of your brain are like kind of fighting against each other, because there's a part of you that has accepted it, and there's another part of you that is, you know, anticipating getting a text from that person, or hearing back from that person. And it's just like, it's a lot. But The Year of Magical Thinking follows Joan Didion in her process and understanding her husband's sudden death, and not just her husband's sudden death, but also her daughter's illness that you know, happens throughout the novel, but you know, they kind of coincide with each other. It happened very, you know, very close together. I guess really the main point of this is, yeah, understanding grief and how you think it's over, but it almost swallows you back into a vortex of things that brings you back to that person. I don't know. This felt like a guide to a North Star when understanding that. I don't really know if I'll ever have really the right words to say. And I'm gonna be honest, I haven't. Something that also made me feel good about this was, as a writer, I felt like it was in my duty to immediately start writing about these feelings that I'm experiencing, and this person who I lost, who was my best friend. And something that Didion mentioned was that she hadn't written for months, and she took time with her grief, and that is something that I'm doing now, and I don't feel as bad about it anymore. I guess this book really just made me feel less bad about the way that I handle things, because there really isn't a right way to handle things, and it's okay to take a time for yourself. It's okay to take a break. It is a universal feeling, but when it comes to a certain person that you've lost, though you share this grief with other people who also loved this person, it feels like a very lonely thing, and understanding that is a process, and I can only, you know, teach myself and learn it on my own. But this book was definitely something that made me feel a lot better about that. And so if you've ever experienced loss, or even if you haven't, I definitely suggest Didion. I feel just much more informative after I read anything written by Didion, and this was great. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope in some way or another that these books serve you any good in your life. I know that, you know, book reviews and book corners are like a popular topic on this channel, and I only talk about books that I love. You'll never find me saying like, nah, this book kind of sucked, but what's the point of talking about things you don't like? Let's talk about the things we do like. Also, if you haven't already, if you would like to check out my book, Film for Her, I will leave a link in the description below where you can find it wherever in the world that you are. Thank you guys so much for supporting me and for being so patient with me. I know these past few months I've been kind of radio silence, but you all have been very patient with me, and I appreciate that, and I love that, and I love you guys so much, and thank you. I also just moved. I finally got a couch. I know I've talked about that I moved before, but things in my life finally feel like they're kind of being placed back together slowly but surely. It's taking time, but before I know it, I will be able to sit back and breathe and feel good about it. And I can't wait for that day, but right now we're just slowly working towards it. I will see you guys in my next video, and I promise I'll try and be more active on, you know, whatever platform that may be, because I really miss you guys. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you soon. Bye.